Rain. A dark street. A phone lay forgotten, face down on the wet sidewalk. A young man walking home spotted the phone. He picked it up, wiping the rain from the screen. It was a simple black phone, older than any he had seen. He slipped it into his pocket, thinking to turn it in later. The rain intensified, driving him onward. Inside his apartment, warm and dry, he remembered the phone. He pulled it out, surprised by its unexpected weight. The screen flickered to life, a pale light in the dimly lit room. It showed a single image, a refrigerator, its white surface gleaming. He frowned. It looked familiar, like his own. The phone grew warm in his hand, almost hot. A low hum emanated from it, a sound that sent chills down his spine. Suddenly, words appeared on the screen, bright and urgent. "Open me!" The message was simple, yet it carried a weight that made his heart race. It was as if the phone itself was alive, demanding his attention, commanding him to obey. He stared at the phone, fear crawling up his throat. His mind raced with questions. Who sent this? Why him? The fear was palpable, almost suffocating. He could feel his pulse quicken, each beat echoing in his ears like a drum. The image on the screen shifted, now showing a clear path to his own kitchen, the refrigerator at the end. The humming grew louder. It was a sound he had never noticed before, a low, almost mechanical hum that seemed to resonate with the very core of his being. He tried to turn off the phone, but it wouldn't respond. Panic set in as he pressed every button, swiped every corner of the screen, but nothing worked. It was as if the phone had a mind of its own, refusing to relinquish its hold on him. He felt a pull towards the kitchen, an unseen force urging him forward. His legs moved on their own, each step heavy and reluctant. It was as if he was being guided by an invisible hand, one that he couldn't resist even if he wanted to. He couldn't explain it, but he had to see what was inside that fridge. The compulsion was overwhelming, a mix of dread and curiosity. As his hand reached for the refrigerator door, he hesitated. 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. What could be inside? Why was he being drawn to it? The answers eluded him, but he knew he had no choice but to find out. The kitchen was dark, the only light coming from the phone in his trembling hand. Shadows danced on the walls, creating eerie shapes that seemed to move with a life of their own. His breath was shallow, each exhale visible in the cold air. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional hum of the refrigerator. He stood before the refrigerator, its cold metal radiating against his palm. The chill seeped through his skin, sending shivers down his spine. He hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The refrigerator seemed to hum louder, as if urging him to make a decision. He could feel a cold breath on his face, like standing in front of an open freezer. The air was frigid, almost unnatural, and it made his skin prickle. He squinted into the darkness, trying to see what lay beyond the cold air. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. The phone vibrated violently, the hum reaching a fever pitch. It was a stark contrast to the stillness of the room, a reminder of the outside world. He glanced at the screen, but the light was too bright, blinding him momentarily. The vibration seemed to echo in the silence, amplifying his anxiety. He knew he shouldn't, but he had to see. Curiosity gnawed at him, battling with the fear that gripped his heart. What was behind that door? He took a step closer, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. The urge to uncover the mystery was overwhelming, almost irresistible. His fingers gripped the handle. It was cold, almost painfully so, and he could feel the frost biting into his skin. He tightened his grip, feeling the metal dig into his flesh. The moment stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. The metal was icy, almost burning his skin. He could feel the coldness spreading through his hand, numbing his fingers. It was as if the refrigerator was alive, its cold breath seeping into his very bones. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He took a deep breath and pulled. The door creaked open, revealing the dark, icy interior. The cold air rushed out, enveloping him in its frigid embrace. He peered inside, his heart pounding in his chest. What he saw made his blood run cold. The light from the fridge blinded him for a moment. Then he saw it. The kitchen was dark, save for the harsh white light spilling from the open refrigerator door. He squinted, trying to make sense of the shapes and shadows within. Nestled amongst the cartons and jars, something stared back at him. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before. His breath caught in his throat as he leaned in closer, trying to discern what it was. The usual contents of the fridge seemed to fade into the background, overshadowed by the presence of this strange entity. A single enormous eye, its pupil dilated, filled with an ancient, knowing fear. It was as if the eye held secrets from a time long forgotten, secrets that were now being revealed to him in the most unexpected of places. The eye seemed to peer into his very soul, reading his thoughts and emotions. It blinked, slow and deliberate, and he could feel his own heart seize in his chest. The slow, methodical blink was almost hypnotic, drawing him in deeper. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead as he struggled to comprehend the reality of what he was seeing. The eye's gaze was unrelenting, and he felt a primal fear take hold of him. The phone slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. The humming stopped. The sudden silence was deafening, amplifying the tension in the room. He wanted to look away, to run, but he was rooted to the spot, unable to tear his eyes from the monstrous gaze that held him captive. He was alone, with whatever was in his fridge. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. There was no one to call for help, no one to share in the terror of this moment. He was utterly and completely alone, facing an unimaginable horror that had somehow found its way into his mundane, everyday life. The eye continued to stare, unblinking now, as if waiting for him to make the next move. The eye blinked again, then it shifted, something large and unseen moving behind the jars and containers. A hand, its skin an unnatural pale blue, pushed aside a carton of milk. The movement was slow, deliberate, like a predator sizing up its prey. He stumbled back, fear paralyzing him. He wanted to scream, to run, but he couldn't. He was trapped. A raspy voice, filled with cold and hunger, sliced through the silence. "Help me," it whispered from the depths of the fridge. He could make out the faint outline of a face. No features visible except that single terrible eye. It stared into his soul, and he knew in that moment that he was utterly and completely lost. The refrigerator door swung open wider, a silent invitation into a nightmare.